Welcome to Tandem HR's second quarter webinar, Effective Onboarding, Setting Employees Up for Success. My name is Sarah Ritter and I'm a Senior HR Consultant here at Tandem HR and will be presenting today's webinar. Here at Tandem HR, we understand that a business's biggest investment is in its people. Our goal is to help you get the most out of this investment. From handling your HR administration to implementing an effective performance management strategy, Tandem HR is focused on having a positive impact on your business results. Our webinars offer you practical tips and tools to contribute to both your HR and your business success. All right, so to omit any static or interruptions, we've placed everybody on mute. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them into the questions box on the right side of your screen. Today we're going to be discussing the benefits of having an established onboarding program and process and how to make your process more effective. If you think about it, recruitment, hiring, and employee onboarding can be compared to a personal relationship. During the recruitment and hiring process, interactions with the candidate are normally very warm and persuasive, almost like a courtship. When the employee starts, more information is revealed, beginning with the honeymoon phase. Like a disappointed newlywed who wonders where all the flowers and candlelight went, many new hires are virtually ignored throughout the first weeks of their employment. Employers need to take steps to ensure that that doesn't happen and keep wooing their new hires throughout their employment. So before we get started and to get everybody engaged, I want to get a feel for where everyone is at regarding their organization's onboarding process. So we are going to do a quick poll here. Everybody get your mouths ready. All right, the options are we have an established onboarding program and use it to our advantage. We have a formal program, but it doesn't seem to be working. We have orientation checklists, but no formal program. Or we have nothing. We need help. Please take a few moments to select your answer. All right, so it looks like we're tied pretty much. 41% think have an established onboarding program and use it to our advantage. For those of you, hopefully we can give you some tips to make your program even better. And for the other half of you, orientation checklists only, hopefully we can give you some steps and tools that you can utilize when you're putting together your onboarding program. So let's take a look at today's objectives. All right, so today we're going to be establishing the components of a successful onboarding program because, you know, it's not just the HR paperwork anymore. We will also discuss some of the benefits of effective onboarding as first impressions make all the difference. And then once we know what the components are, we're going to discuss some different ways that you can effectively execute each component and outline the roles that your managers must play in order to make the program a success. Finally, we'll give managers some tips and tools that they can use when developing their onboarding training program. So let's get started. All right, so what is effective onboarding anyway? This may seem obvious to some, but you would be surprised at how many companies don't know. Many organizations still view onboarding as a paper-pushing activity. New hire paperwork, W-4s, I-9s, benefits paperwork, and the employee handbook. Yeah, these are all components to the onboarding process, and they must be done in an organized manner, but in order to be truly effective, an onboarding program must be so much more than that. Onboarding refers to the process through which new employees acquire the skills, knowledge, and behaviors to become effective contributors to an organization. The entire purpose of an effective onboarding program is to transfer the applicable knowledge an employee needs to succeed and to establish an emotional and personal connection with the new employee, one that's going to foster engagement and loyalty. It must engage the employee from their very first hour of employment. It needs to be an established process that everyone in the organization, across departments and at all levels, follows. The first effective onboarding component includes welcoming employees aboard and genuinely letting them know that you are glad that they decided to come work for you. Do you do things that communicate, we're glad you're here? Or is it more, let's just get to work, we have a lot of things to do? Also included in the welcoming component is all the prep work that you must do prior to the new hire's first day. Next is what I'm calling administrative onboarding. As stated before, onboarding does include paper pushing. However, it needs to be done in a consistent and organized manner, as there are legal requirements for new hire paperwork, such as the I-9, which most of you know must be completed within the first 3 days of employment. Next is to inform the new employees about the broad range of company policies and procedures that will affect all aspects of their work, their relationship with the organization, and compliance with any laws and regulations that you're required to follow. Included here would be any work standards, work rules and procedures, and safety requirements that they will be required to follow. The first three components just discussed are very important, but it's the last three that really make up the meat of an effective onboarding program. The next component is acquiring acquainting new workers with the company, which includes the products and services that you offer, what your place in the market is, who's who, and how that employee will contribute to the overall mission of the organization. You may be thinking, well, they should already know that from the interview process, but this is your chance to introduce them to your internal organization, your processes, your people, and your culture, confidential items that you may not have shared with them prior to being hired. The onboarding process should also facilitate the new employee's adjustment to the new position. An effective onboarding program conveys all the initial information employees need to know about their jobs within the first few weeks. Include specific information about the job, including a review of the job description and any other expectations that you have of the position, as well as on-the-job training and oversight. The last element of effective onboarding is to open the channels of communication through which employees can obtain information, ask questions, and discuss any concerns they may have. Onboarding doesn't only occur on the employee's first day or even first week. It's a continuous process of communication that spans well into their employment. It's important to note that all of these components, although each distinctly separate, must align together to meet one goal. All onboarding programs work better when all efforts point in the same direction. So when your onboarding components align, you can get more done in less time. This is why your manager's involvement and buy-in is key. Effective onboarding requires your manager to lead the new employee's onboarding experience from start to finish. So, why is this topic even applicable, and why are we here today? There are no laws that require you to have a full onboarding program or train your managers on the program. But it is wise to do so, as when your employees get off to a good start, there's a better chance that you can avoid discipline problems and subsequent turnover, which can lead to discrimination or wrongful discharge claims that can cost you way much more time and energy, and even your organization's reputation, not to mention a large amount of money. Take a moment to think about what could happen if you didn't have an onboarding program or plan. Do you think that employees would maybe feel lost, confused, maybe even a little bit neglected? Would they make a lot of mistakes? Or could they even be exposed to potential safety hazards? And worse, even feel that they made a mistake coming to work for the company, and nobody wants that. One of our HR consultants came across a great example of this just a few weeks ago. He was conducting a new hire onboard at a client on the employee's first day and was surprised when the employee was so thankful towards him following the meeting. The employee told him that at her previous employer, no one even met with her on her first day to go over her new position or to fill out any necessary paperwork. It wasn't until she needed to be paid that she was contacted to fill anything out. She had to reach out to multiple people to find out how to enroll in benefits and when she was even eligible for those benefits. She said that this lack of organization led to her feeling that she was not wanted by the company and added to her decision to look for another job and ultimately leave that company. She said that she was at her former employer for about a year, but she always thought back to that first day. She was grateful to have a good first impression of her new employer. This is just one of the many stories that we have heard over the years, but what effect does it truly have on a company? Onboarding done right drives employee productivity, accelerates results, and significantly improves talent retention. As noted in our story, this is a powerful, vulnerable time in the life of an employee. It represents the most teachable moment that your company will ever have with the employee. Companies and managers must establish a personal connection with the employee during this time. Otherwise, the efforts could be in vain. An employee's onboarding experience will shape their perception of the company and can ultimately affect their decision to stay or to look for employment elsewhere. Without an effective onboarding program, companies could be fueling disengagement and turnover. In fact, believe it or not, 90% of employees decide whether or not they're going to stay at an organization or begin looking for a new job during the first 6 months on the job. Did I get your attention? Yes. I said 90%. This means that making a strong first impression is critical to increasing employee retention and reducing turnover costs. In another survey, 76% of employees say that effective on-the-job training, or knowledge transfer as I call it, is important if they are able to get up to speed quickly and start contributing. Although this may seem obvious, you would be surprised at how many employers ignore this fact or do not train or transfer knowledge to their new employees effectively. In keeping with that, 61% of employers in a recent study acknowledged that their organizations are ineffective at transferring the applicable knowledge to incoming employees. This is particularly concerning in light of the baby boomer exodus, where knowledge transfer is now more important than ever. 76% of employers state that they still use printed materials as well as the core of their onboarding practices. This is not always the most effective training method for adults, as they have a very short attention span and learn best by a more hands-on approach. Overall, companies cannot afford to hire employees, overwhelm them with paperwork, neglect to offer sufficient socialization and proper on-the-job training, and then just leave them to sink or swim. Employers who do this are ultimately setting employees up for failure, and you may as well just start recruiting for the position you just filled all over again. So, as you can see, striving to be able to provide new employees with the best possible onboarding experience so that they can start their new jobs with all of the information they need to excel in their work, it has many benefits. First, the impressions an employee forms in the first few days or even hours of employment can last a lifetime. It can have a huge impact on the employee job performance and satisfaction. New employees are anxious to learn their way around and find out about their job responsibilities. They also want to feel that their manager is ready and willing to help them succeed. As seen in my story before, our employee's negative first impression of her former employer followed her all the way through her employment. It also provides a solid and consistent way to provide the new employee with the information that is essential to his or her job. By following a consistent process, you ensure that all employees receive the same information, the same amount of training, and the same amount of employee access to information. This may limit the likelihood of a discrimination or wrongful discharge claim later on down the road. And third, effective onboarding also provides the employee with on-the-job training. In the recent survey, remember 76% of respondents agreed that on-the-job training is the most important thing that new employees need to get up to speed and begin contributing quickly. Also, effective onboarding helps you get to know your new employee and be better able to understand the issues he or she may need more training on. Onboarding covers a lot of ground, so responsibility is usually divided among human resources, managers, and even sometimes coworkers. But it's usually the managers who bear the key responsibility here to ensure that the new employees are properly informed and trained to do their job safely, correctly, and productively. Piggybacking off of this, effectively onboarding an employee and establishing a personal connection with them can increase their engagement and loyalty to the job and the company when done right. You get the engagement from employees that you deserve. If you don't engage with them, they're not going to engage with you. If you want them to commit to the cause, you must make a personal connection with them. The only way to get this level of commitment from them is for the company and their manager to commit to them personally, starting with how they are onboarded. This is especially true for the millennial workforce, as their need for connecting at a personal level is particularly high. Think back on your own past orientation experiences. How well were you introduced to a new company and new job? How will your experiences affect how you, as a manager, orient your own new employees? On that note, managers play a key leadership role in making new employee onboarding effective in a number of ways. HR may establish the overall process, oversee and assist managers in onboarding. However, it's ultimately the manager's responsibility to ensure that the onboarding process runs smoothly and effectively, helping the employee to establish that personal connection to the company as they will have the closest interactions with the new employee. A manager's involvement can make or break the process, and employees agree. Most employees say that their managers are the biggest influence on the success or failure of their onboarding experience. First, managers are the planners. They plan and schedule all onboarding activities, being sure to organize the process in a logical, step-by-step manner. Once the new employee has arrived for the first day of work, it is the manager that should coordinate and organize their days by guiding them through all of the components of the onboarding process. Managers also oversee the training of the new employee when they are not providing it themselves. Managers should monitor new employees' progress throughout the onboarding process to make sure that they're learning what they need to know and are advancing on schedule. Managers are also the ones who evaluate the success of the onboarding process and the readiness for new employees to proceed into the next stage of employment. If there are any updates to be made to the onboarding process, the manager needs to communicate this to HR, because there might be other departments experiencing the same difficulties, and that way the company can make any adjustments that may be needed. Finally, managers are also the key in providing support and encouragement for the new employee throughout the onboarding process. This cannot be stressed enough, as the entire goal of the onboarding process is to create a personal connection and trust with the new employee. Managers are key players in this aspect. All right, so at this point, after review of the effective onboarding components, I want to get a handle for what everyone feels is the most important component in the onboarding process at their organization. So let's pretend that we're all laying on a nice sandy beach. If you're in Chicago this morning, you'll know what I mean, and do another quick poll. As a reminder, the components of onboarding are welcoming the employee, administrative onboarding, informing about policies, acquainting with the company, and facilitating adjustment. All right, so it looks like the majority of you chose facilitating adjustment and open communication. That is true, and really this is a trick question, as all of the are important components of an onboarding program, but in order to be effective, the components must be aligned toward one strategic goal and aim to establish an emotional connection with the new employee. So in this next section of the webinar, let's take a closer look at each component. Although we are going to go over the components in order, it's important to note that multiple components may be happening at the same time. Let's take a look at the welcoming component first. As soon as you receive a signed offer letter from a new employee, the welcoming component should begin. Upon acceptance of the offer, the manager and/or human resources should call the employee to welcome them and reiterate how glad they are that they decided to join your work family. This communication should also include some key components, such as what time to arrive at work on the first day, where to park, what door to enter and where to report, whether that might be to central reception or to human resources, depending on your organization, what to wear, and what documents to bring as well. Their social security card, driver's license, a voided check for direct deposit, and so on. Next, send the new hire as much material on the company as you can, such as benefit packets, employee handbooks, the most recent company newsletter, or an org chart, just as a few examples. Also, inform the employee's future coworkers exactly when to expect the person and what their role will be within the company. However, it's important here to avoid overselling the new hire's credentials. Gaining a new colleague can make existing employees feel a bit insecure. Make the communication a positive one. Ask for their help and cooperation in orienting the new employee to the job, the department, and the company. Next, outfit their workspace for their arrival. This may seem like a no-brainer, but have you ever started a new job and did not receive a computer, email, phone, or even a workspace for the first couple of days? It happens more often than you think. Did you view the company as organized, welcoming, and invested in its employees' productivity? Make the workplace welcoming. Perhaps include a welcome sign or message, or add a decorative plant to make it more inviting. Have their nameplate in place before they arrive and include all of the office supplies that they are likely to need. Also, ensuring that the employees is set up from a technology standpoint on their very, very first day is critical. Make sure all computers, emails, phones, monitors, printers, etc. are set up and available for use prior to their arrival. The new employee must be given the tools that they need to do their job in an effective and organized manner in order to speed up productivity. Lastly, make sure you know what the employee will be doing for at least the first 2 weeks. Prepare an activity schedule. It may include introductions to people in other departments that the employee will interact with, meetings with HR, and getting to know the various functions of the job. Plan time on the schedule to train, evaluate, and discuss expectations with your new employee. We're going to get more into this when we talk about the other components, but you should begin to prepare before the employee even starts. Now that you have prepared for your new colleague's arrival, what is supposed to happen on the first day? The employee's first day should be highly structured and outlined in the activity schedule that you prepared. Design the employee's first day just the same as you would a customer experience. Don't leave first impressions to chance, because as we found out in our earlier example, people don't always remember what others said or did, but they always remember how they felt. First, ensure that you're available to greet the employee upon their arrival. Don't schedule any other meetings for that time. Make sure that you are warm and welcoming to the employee, and reiterate that you are glad that they have made the decision to join your team. Next, review the activity schedule with them. Make sure they know what the first few weeks will entail and answer any questions. Also introduce the new employee to the team. Not only the team that they're going to be working with, but anyone in the other departments that they may be working with. Schedule a team lunch so that you can get to know the employee on a more personal level, and they can get to know the team. You know, in fact, as part of the activity schedule, you may want to schedule lunch with a different team member each day for maybe the first week or two. How this is done will vary depending on your company and your resources, whether it's taking them out to lunch or even just a brown bag lunch in the cafeteria. Next are the orientations that we are all familiar with, IT and HR. Make sure that both IT and HR have times booked on their calendar to accomplish this. Don't treat it just as we're going to get to you when we're available. Does that look organized to you? The first day should also be in the facilitating adjustment component, which we will review later. Plan a simple but meaningful job assignment for the employee's first day. Reading stacks of papers or manuals is not a good beginning. It can be something simple, such as shadowing another coworker performing a task that the employee might be doing, maybe reviewing files from the previous job folder, or even becoming familiar with a piece of equipment. Finally, end the day on a positive note. Before the employee leaves for the day, spend a few minutes of private time together. Review the progress that they made on their first day work assignment, and answer any additional questions. Repeat that you are glad that they decided to come and join you and work for the company, and that you're looking forward to seeing the employee tomorrow. It's really important to note here that too often managers do a great job on the first day and then let things slide. Managers must continue the onboarding process until the employee is completely settled in. Next is administrative onboarding. This is the step that most managers are familiar with, so we won't spend too much time here. Although these are familiar, this component should still be done in a consistent and organized manner. As stated before, make sure that you don't treat it as, we'll get to it when we can. Actually schedule time on the applicable parties' calendars, HR and IT, so that they will be available at the specified times. On the employee's first day, make sure that you give them a full tour of your company's facilities. Make sure they know where to find the items that they're going to need to do their job and get around. The office supply closet, printer location, where different departments are located, and then even the kitchens, restrooms, and cafeteria as other examples. This can be completed either by the manager or by human resources. The HR orientation should include any applicable paperwork, such as tax forms, emergency contact information, I-9s, and so on. You should have informed the new employee during your welcome call of all of the items that they need to bring with them on their first day so that they will be prepared for this meeting. HR will also review the benefit information and employee handbook with the employee. Same with the IT orientation. IT should have been notified prior to the employee's first day so that all applicable equipment, key cards, logins, and passcodes, and the like can be established. IT should review the proper operation of the equipment, for example, how to set up voicemail, how to operate the printers, and review any applications that they might be using, as well as any IT security policies and procedures that you have in place. The next component is informing the employee about company policies and procedures. Although this may seem administrative, it's different in a few key ways. First, this is the manager's opportunity to convey their own expectations regarding the company policies and procedures. Although HR may have reviewed the employee handbook at a company level, the manager should also communicate their own specific expectations in regard to these policies with the employee. How does the manager enforce these policies? What are their basic expectations regarding the work standards and procedures within the department? Does the employee have any questions regarding the handbook? Also, there may be department-specific policies and procedures in place as well. For example, if you're in healthcare, what are the patient care policies? If you're in customer service, what are the customer service standards? These are just a couple examples of information that needs to be conveyed by the manager, who is the subject matter expert in these areas and not necessarily HR. Finally, depending on your industry, there may be very specific safety policies and procedures that you are required to follow and train your employees on, particularly in a manufacturing warehouse environment. Items like elaborate workplace safety programs and forklift operation policies, among others, are all required by the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or OSHA, and must be conveyed to employees in an organized manner and documented that these policies and procedures were conveyed. So next, we're going to have acquainting with the company. Now that we have discussed making sure that the employee is warmly welcomed and aware of their expectations regarding the company policies and procedures, let's talk about acquainting the employee with the company. Make sure that you explain the company's mission, vision, and values to the employees so that they know where the company is going. Let them know about any company or departmental goals that you have for the next year, and longer term if these have been established. Provide an in-depth overview of the products and services that you offer. Where do you stand in the market currently? Where do you want to go? Who are your competitors? Also, review the org chart with them, including names and titles, so that they know the key players in the organization. If a complete org chart just isn't feasible because of the size of your organization, at least review the names and titles of the coworkers in the same department, with the others listed simply by category. You should still list the names and titles of the top officers, however, so that the employees know who they are. The main goal of this step, however, is to let the new employee know how they will individually fit into the company's overall plans and goals. What will the employee be doing that will help the company meet these goals? How can they best contribute? Then this segues directly into the next component, facilitating adjustment. Facilitating adjustment is perhaps the one that falls through the cracks most of the time. However, it can be argued that this is also the most critical component, as you all identified earlier. So what do we mean by facilitating adjustment? Simply stated, employees need all of the information that they need to do their job and feel comfortable in the work environment. Knowledge, both about the job and the company, from outgoing or current employees must be transferred to the new employee in order to effectively keep the organization moving forward. On the first day, review the employee's job description with them in depth, review it bullet by bullet, answer any questions that they have. Convey any additional or more specific expectations that you as a manager have regarding their job description. For example, what will you be evaluating them on come review time? Also, if the job description simply states, completes reports as assigned, review specifically what reports will be assigned to them. What steps do they take to complete them? How often are they to complete the said reports? Not that you, as their manager, need to sit down and show every single little step to the employees. That can be delegated. But you need to verbally make your expectations known. It's vital to discuss these matters at the very beginning, when the new employees are most responsive to this information. In your activity plan, you should have outlined specific job training that the employee will be given as well. Remember those reports? When and with which coworker will the employee be trained on that aspect of their job description? Also, be sure to clear your schedule as much as possible during the onboarding period. Even though you'll have help, make sure you won't be locked up in meetings or out of town on business, if at all possible. A manager needs to plan to spend as much time with the new employee as possible. Again, not only to train the employee, but to establish that personal connection with them. You can also facilitate an employee's adjustment by establishing shadowing opportunities with fellow coworkers. Set up specific shadowing schedules in the onboarding plan so that the new employee can firsthand see how the department works and communicates. Transfer knowledge among employees and give the new employee the opportunity to establish personal relationships with coworkers. Follow up with the established employees after the shadowing sessions to see how it went. If there are issues, you want to know about them early so that you can help your new hire adjust. Additionally, make sure that you provide the new employee with the necessary support and resources and follow through that they need in order to be successful. Lastly, assign the new employee a mentor who can share with them how things work in the company and be available for any questions or concerns. Have the mentor take the new employee out to lunch once a month just to see how things are going. Again, the ultimate goal of onboarding is to transfer knowledge and for the new employee to establish a personal connection with the company and his or her coworkers. So let's take a closer look about the role of an effective mentor in the onboarding process. Although the effective onboarding of new employees is essentially the responsibility of the manager, we're all busy, right? Assigning a mentor to the employee can help the manager balance the onboarding responsibilities and ensure that the onboarding process runs smoothly. Additionally, in a recent study, employers noted as having effective onboarding programs included mentoring programs twice as often as those with ineffective programs. When selecting your mentor, it should be one of your most experienced and knowledgeable employees. They should be with the company for at least a year, have a good performance history, be engaged and committed to the organization, and be knowledgeable of the new employee's job and company procedures and expectations. They should also definitely have patience and the ability to serve as a positive role model for the new employee. Make sure that the mentor also has the available time to actually mentor the employee. Once the onboarding is off to a good start, the mentor can step in and act as a buddy to the new employee. The expectations of a mentor should be confirmed with them in advance so that everyone is on the same page. The mentor should be a source of complete and accurate information about policies, procedures, work roles, safety hazards, and accepted practices, and so on, so that after the manager reviews these items with the employee, they have an additional resource for any questions that may come up. The mentor can also assist the employee to clarify job assignments and help the new employee to set job priorities according to the company and department's expectations. The mentor should also be able to answer new employees' questions about the job and help solve any problems that may arise. Lastly, the mentor should be able to provide feedback and encouragement to the employee as they adjust to the position and your company. It's important to note that managers should check in with the mentor on a regular basis. How is everything going with the employee? Is there anything that you as the manager need to be aware of so that you can help the new employee to facilitate their adjustment to the company and the position? The last element of effective onboarding is to open the channels of communication through which employees can obtain information, ask questions, and discuss any concerns. You will rely on effective two-way communication not only during the onboarding process, but also throughout your professional relationship with the employee. It's your responsibility as a manager to provide open communication to your employees on a continuous basis, not just during the onboarding process or when concerns arise. This is key in gaining the employee's trust and building a successful manager-employee relationship. So openly praise positive behavior and good performance. Always remember that recognition is key. For example, great job on that webinar, Sarah. Remember to also address any negative behavior that you see in private. You should not call out any employee regarding deficiencies in front of their coworkers. As you can imagine, this does not foster the emotional and personal connection that you want to have with your employees. Would you feel committed to a manager that disparages you in public? Schedule regular meetings with the employee throughout his or her employment as well. Let this be a time where your employee knows that they will have your undivided attention. Turn off your cell phone, don't answer the door. Have them draft the agenda so that they can speak with you about any issues that they may be having. they should actually lead the meeting so that they can address any issues that they need to with you. Also encourage employees to ask you for feedback, particularly if they are not sure they are on the right track or they have any questions about any aspect of their work. Offer the opportunity to discuss any issues or questions as they arise. By addressing any issues or concerns informally first, you may avoid having to move to more serious action later. This can be most helpful and effective if you, as the manager, make yourself approachable and have a genuine concern for the employee's well-being and development. This is also known as open door management. If an employee does not trust you, they're going to be less likely to come to you with any problems, which may compound the situation in the future. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of establishing that personal connection with the employee. By providing open communication on a continuous basis, the employee will know exactly where they stand. The foundations for open communication begin with the onboarding process. So now that we have a better understanding of the components, I do want to, just a brief point to note out is that these components are necessary for effective onboarding for most employees, but there may be some alterations that are needed depending on the type of position, their level, and ability. For example, temporary employees. The length and depth of onboarding for a temporary worker will depend on the complexity of the job, any safety issues, and the amount of information that's needed to be productive. In general, the shorter the length of employment, the less time needed for onboarding. At a minimum, you should cover payroll procedures, work hours, key company policies, any safety and security information they need to know, their job expectations and duties, and training on any equipment they're going to be using. Part-time employees, on the other hand, are employees with whom you are going to have that ongoing relationship with, just as with any of your full-time employees. So therefore, part-time employees should get the same exact orientation as full-time employees. Lastly, the orientation process for disabled employees will be basically the same as for any other employee. The Americans with Disabilities Act does, however, require you to make reasonable accommodations for new employees with disabilities. Therefore, the onboarding process may need to be modified depending on the nature of any necessary accommodations. All right, so that is a lot of information. So now let's pull it all together. By the end of the first week, job training should be well underway. Most of the main orientation issues, such as HR and IT, should be complete, and the new employee should have had time to complete all of the necessary documentation. The employee should also have become more familiar with the job, department, coworkers, and the company, and any applicable policies through the various components of the effective onboarding. They have been assigned and also introduced to their mentor. At this point, managers should schedule a formal meeting with the employee to make sure that he or she is adjusting well to the job. The manager should review the employee's understanding of the duties, responsibilities, and procedures provided during the week at this time. This meeting will also provide the employee with a chance to ask questions and for managers to clarify any misconceptions that the employee may have about the job. After 2 weeks, the employee should be well underway into the facilitating adjustment component. Meet formally with the employee, again, to discuss his or her progress and to answer any questions. Check on how well the employee is doing with the job training and discuss any problems concerning the training or any other aspects of the job. Think about maybe if you need to extend the activity schedule based on the employee's progress. After 4 weeks, the intensive onboarding period will pretty much have run its course. At this time, you can give new employees a brief evaluation of their performance, identify areas of strength and needed growth. This is a good time to review the performance appraisal process with them so that the new employee knows what to expect from the first review. You can also discuss future training needs with the employee at this meeting. But it doesn't end there. Many employers consider the onboarding process finished following the first month. However, if you want to keep your employee engaged and make a personal commitment to the company, this is definitely not the case. The components of onboarding may last through the first 6 months to a year, depending on the employee and the pace at which they get acclimated to your environment. First, the manager should make sure to pace the onboarding to suit the learning pace of the individual employee. At the end of the 4th week, it should be evaluated as to whether the onboarding activities such as shadowing and additional on-the-job training should continue. Again, ask yourself if you need to extend the activity schedule. Additionally, just because the formal, in quotes, onboarding process is over, that does not diminish the need for the manager to continue to practice the components of effective onboarding. Activities involved in facilitating adjustment may continue for up to the employee's first year. For example, the employee's relationship with their mentor, any on-the-job training, and open communication should be practiced throughout the employee's tenure with the company. Oh, wow, that was a lot of information. So let's take another relaxing coffee break and answer another fun poll. So now that we know more information about the components, we know which one is most important to you, but which one do you feel is going to be the biggest challenge at your organization to implement? Again, the choices are welcoming, administrative onboarding, informing about policies, acquainting with the company, and facilitating adjustment and open communication. All right, so it looks like it's overwhelmingly 67% of you think that facilitating adjustment and open communications are the biggest challenge. And you know, that's what I've seen in my experiences too. Most companies struggle with the facilitating adjustment component, and that's the transferring of knowledge, which can be argued to be the most important component, but often which the least effort is put into. So how do you successfully transfer knowledge? Previously, you heard me mention that one of the purposes of effective onboarding is the transfer of knowledge between employees, and that 61% of employers are concerned that they're not effectively transferring it. In this next section of the webinar, I would like to give managers some tools and ideas that they can utilize to make their training programs more effective to facilitate the knowledge transfer process. By incorporating some of these ideas, you can increase your effectiveness in transferring the necessary knowledge to employees while facilitating adjustment and establishing that personal connection with them at the same time. All right, so there are 4 steps that managers can follow when developing their training program for a new employee. First, in order to schedule training for new employees, managers must first assess their training needs. The particular training an employee will need depends on the current level of his or her job skills and their previous experience. Second, select the training methods that will be most effective for the knowledge that needs to be transferred to the new employee. The method of training managers will select will depend on the skills being taught and the learning style of the new employee. Whatever method is chosen, be sure to keep training simple and specific and don't assume anything. It's better to review something with a new employee already knows than fail to cover an important detail. Third, assign the trainers. Managers may choose to train employees themselves or delegate much or all of this task to other veteran employees or subject matter experts. This should not be a random process based on who's available, though. When assigning trainers, remember the qualities for good mentors that we discussed earlier. Most of the same qualities will apply to trainers as well. Lastly, regardless of who conducts the new employee training, managers should be involved in the entire process. Find out if the employee has learned the necessary skills and can perform up to the required standards. If not, decide what additional training is needed and how it will be conducted. So before we dive into these steps a little bit more in detail, it can be helpful for you as managers to know a little bit about adult learning. Most adults are self-directed learners. They want to learn what they want, when they want, and how they want. Adults learn best and retain the most when they know why they are learning something and when they are actively involved in the learning process. Because many adults can be reluctant to accept new ideas and methods of working, it may be helpful to remember the 7 rules of training reluctant learners. The first rule of adult learning is the rule of previous experience. Remember to tie all new learning to and further build on the prior experiences of the new employee. The second rule is the rule of relevance. Effective learning for adults must be relevant to their lives and work. Make sure that the employee understands how the training session applies to their jobs and their lives. Don't leave them wondering why they are receiving the training. The answer should be clear. The third is self-direction. Many adults prefer to learn at their own pace, hence the reason why many times onboarding and the adjustment period usually go beyond the initial months. Fourth is the rule of expectation. Adult reactions to training sessions are often shaped by the expectations that they have tied to the content, the training format, their fellow trainees, and even the trainers. Any training should focus on the why. Why are things done as they are at this workplace? How do the employees in the company benefit? Prepare employees to retain the knowledge or skills that they learn in the training by making sure they understand the significance of the job and of learning the proper way to do it. The fifth is the rule of self-image. Adults have set notions of the best way they learn. These notions may interfere with or enhance the learning experience and must be taken into consideration. Work with your new employee to ensure that the training is working for them. The sixth rule is the rule of transference. Adult learners base the quality of the training on the accomplishments and learning experiences gained from the training. Adults want to bring what they learn in training directly to the workplace. One way to encourage transference is to have trainees demonstrate their learning by showing how they will apply their knowledge or skills that they have gained through the training. Finally, we have the alignment rule. In successful learning, objectives, content, activities, and assessment techniques must all be aligned to each other. The employee must understand how it relates to one common goal. Additionally, studies have shown that over a period of days, adults remember only a little of what they read and only a little more of what they hear, but they remember a much greater percentage of what they see and hear. They retain the most knowledge they do. This means that the most effective training involves demonstrations and hands-on learning, and not reading from training manuals. It's also important to remember that when people are asked to learn too much too fast, they suffer from information overload. They shut down and fail to take in any more information. Be sure to spread out the knowledge transfer process over a sufficient amount of time to allow you to provide information in manageable bits and pieces. It's important to keep these keys in mind as you develop your training plan. Now, let's discuss the steps of the knowledge transfer process. In order to schedule training for new employees, managers must first assess their training needs. The particular training an employee will need depends on the current level of his or her job skills and their previous experience. This involves identifying the differences between what is and what should be. Start with what is. Take a hard look at the current state of the position. Is the job description up to date? What were the previous incumbent shortcomings, if any? What was missing before? Or what did the previous employee know that needs to be transferred? What feedback did you get from exit interviews? Has there been some common theme amongst multiple incumbents that must be addressed? What do you need to do to ensure that the new employee knows everything that they need to know to make them successful? List all of the needs that you see to get to what should be. Once you've identified the needs, you must decide how to meet them. This is not always a linear process. It's often most accurate to see it as a web of interconnected questions, all of which may need to be taken into account. Some of these questions are, which needs are priorities to get the new employee up and running? What are the training objectives of the needs? On that note, training objectives should then be designed to meet identified training needs. Training objectives may indicate that trainees will display an understanding of certain concepts, an ability to properly perform certain procedures or job tasks, or depending on the position, an ability to comply with laws and regulations, just as examples. Once you identify your training needs and objectives, you can begin to choose your training methods that will best achieve your desired results. Now that you have identified your training needs and objectives, how are you going to effectively transfer that knowledge to the new employee? The method of training managers choose will depend on the objectives identified and the learning style of the new employee. Some common training methods include mentorship and coaching. As we have seen, employees highly value an established mentor to get them acclimated to the organization and help them navigate their place within the company. The next is job shadowing. When assigning job shadowing, make sure it is with employees who have a general knowledge of the employee position. Even if their position is not exactly the same, they will be able to impart knowledge as to how the department works at least and what is expected, and establish that personal connection. Paired work is also an option. Paired work is different from job shadowing in one specific way. It's an actual job assignment that is required to be completed. The new employee and existing employee are required to complete the assignment together, and they both have equal stakes in the outcome. And then the obvious one is live training. However, when choosing the live training method, it's important to remember the question, why? Why is this material important? Why is the company asking the employee to do the job in a certain way? As we saw before, adults will adopt a new behavior more effectively when they know and respect the reasons why, particularly with live training. Lastly, paper materials should only be used when absolutely necessary. As we've reviewed with adult learning rules, this is the most ineffective method of training that you can use, as it's not interactive or hands-on. Well, you may be thinking, how am I going to know the learning style of an employee that I don't know very well? After all, you have only spent a limited amount of time with them over the interview process. My suggestion here would be to base the training method first on the objective. What method lends itself best to the specific outcome that you're trying to achieve? Then, as you get to know the employee and evaluate the training progress, you'll get to know their learning style better. You will be able to see what is or is not working and can adjust your methodology as you go for what is working the best. The bottom line, though, is that your new employee should be able to feel engaged and establish an emotional connection with the company. The methods that you choose should cater to an employee as an individual. Next, let's take a look at the qualities that you should be looking for in a trainer. All right, so when you're assigning trainers, as I mentioned before, remember the qualities for good mentors that we discussed. Most of the same qualities will apply here as well. They should be with the company for at least a year, have a good performance history, be engaged and committed, and be knowledgeable of the new employee's job and company procedures. They should also have a lot of patience and the ability to serve as a positive role model for the new employee. In addition to these qualities, trainers should always be looking for specific opportunities. When they see chances for continued training, they should suggest it and advocate for it, stepping into that mentor role for the new employee. They should also always take their training responsibilities seriously and encourage everyone else to take it seriously as well. They should always question the view that training is just something to get through, or a series of tasks that stand apart from the rest of the job. They should also be willing and even eager to share responsibility for training. They should have the ability to make it clear that training and continuing to evaluate and follow up are everyone's responsibility. Finally, they should be willing to get others involved. If they feel that they don't have the subject matter expertise that you are asking of them, they should be able to tell you and involve other employees as appropriate. So depending on your organization, it may not be possible to achieve all of these qualities in your trainer, but you should strive to come as close as possible. Finally, we have evaluating results of the training. So regardless of who conducts new employee training, managers should be actively involved in the process. Talk to the trainers and coworkers. What comments did they hear from the new employee? How have they seen the employee apply the knowledge imparted? Have any coworkers noticed that the training was effective or ineffective? What does the employee still need to learn? Also, talk to the employee. Did they feel that the training was effective? Was there anything they believe was missed during the training? Have they learned the necessary skills that they need to be an effective contributor? If not, decide what additional training is needed and how it will be conducted. As stated before, work with the employee to see what will be the best training method for them as an individual. Involve the new employee as much as possible in the training process to keep them engaged. Ask them if they have any suggestions for improvement of the program. You can also evaluate results by evaluating your employee's performance over time. Have you noticed an overall change in your new hire's commitment and performance level since implementing the program? What do the employees still seem to be struggling with? With this feedback, you're going to be able to evaluate whether the knowledge transfer process was successful or whether some tweaks might need to be made to the next round. All of this information can then be included the next time you have to do a needs assessment and start the process all over again, as this 4-step training process should be a continuous cycle. All right, so we have a few minutes left here, so I just wanted to provide you with some final thoughts. Now that we've reviewed all of the components and training information that you can utilize in developing onboarding programs, I'd like to leave you with some overall best practices in onboarding to keep in mind as you're developing your own effective onboarding program. First, you need to definitely ensure that you have your senior leaders buy-in when implementing the process. also during the process and after the onboarding. Their feedback and support is key in ensuring the program is a success. Also, continuously evaluate your knowledge transfer process to make sure that it is both current and effective, and make any changes accordingly. When you update your job description, you should also be looking at the onboarding program, so keep that in mind. As we have stated, involve all departments in the design, development, delivery, and review of the overall structure of the onboarding program. Although how the training modules are structured may differ between departments, the overall process should be the same. Also, as we noted before, implement mentors into your onboarding framework. We've seen how important they can be to employees in order to establish that emotional connection and get them adjusted quickly. And finally, implement any ongoing training programs into your organization to continuously challenge your new and your existing employees. These best practices will help ensure that your onboarding program is a success and that you retain your most valuable employees. And as always, please remember that your Tandem HR consulting team can always assist you in implementing such a program. All right, so we have reviewed so much information today, so I just want to give everybody a quick summary. Remember that the overall goal of the onboarding program is to make a personal connection with the new employee and to transfer the applicable knowledge that they need to do their job well. Effective onboarding can increase employee productivity and loyalty to the organization. Next, the components of effective onboarding are welcoming, administrative, informing of policies, acquaintance with the company, facilitation of adjustment, and open communication. And always remember that they need to be aligned to one common goal. And lastly, just remember that managers must play a key role and drive the entire process. It's the manager's involvement that ultimately makes or breaks the onboarding process. All right, so before we have a couple of minutes left. Before we get to the questions, I do want to let everybody know that for those of you seeking recertification credits, this program has been approved for 1 general recertification credit hours towards the PHR, SPHR, and GPR recertification through the HR Certification Institute. The program ID is noted on the screen. It's that orange program ID 209465. Please be sure to note the program ID number on your recertification application form. For more information about certification or recertification, please visit the HR Certification Institute at www.hrcr.org. I'll give you a second to write it down, or a recording of this program will be available on demand at www.tandemhr.com. All right, so it looks like we're right at the top of the hour here. So with respect to your time, we're going to be answering all questions asked today with a personal email to you within the next 48 business hours. So if you have any further questions, please type them into the question box on the right side of your screen. We'll keep it up for a couple minutes after this presentation if you want to ask any questions. So we hope you enjoyed our presentation and found it informative. Please feel free to reach out to me or your HR consultant with any additional questions. And thank you for the time that you spent with us today. I hope that each of you have a wonderful day and wonderful rest of your weekend. Thanks.